Have you ever felt like you're on this uh, really intense quest for understanding, trying every path, learning from everyone, but still feeling like maybe there's something more?
Oh, absolutely. That search for truth, for something really meaningful, it's universal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And often the biggest breakthroughs, they don't come from the main road.
Exactly. And that's really what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into an ancient text, the Sagāravasuttaṃ. And it's not just some dry document, it's a deeply personal story, a journey of discovery.
Yeah, told by someone pretty pivotal. Our goal here is to pull out the key insights, the really crucial stuff from this source. Think of it as, well, getting you straight to the heart of the experiences that shaped a really revolutionary spiritual path.
So what should you expect? Well, we're going tracing this incredible quest for enlightenment. We'll look at the rigorous experiments, the different paths he tried, the surprising revelations.
And ultimately what led him to his unique understanding, what liberation actually meant for him.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It starts with this classic contrast, deep devotion versus, well, deep skepticism.
Right. We're in a place called Kālāma, and first we meet Dhanañjānī. She's a Brahmin lady, described as incredibly devoted to the Buddha, his teachings, the Dhamma, and the community, the Sangha.
She sounds really enthusiastic. Apparently she's always exclaiming, homage to the exalted one, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one. Full titles.
And you can imagine that level of public devotion, it attracts attention. Which brings us to Sagārava. He's a young Brahmin, also from Kālāma.
And he's not just anyone. He's described as highly learned.
Oh yeah, like a walking encyclopedia, master of the Vedas, the sacred texts, plus all the related stuff, rituals, etymology, history, phonetics, grammar, even the signs of a great man. So intellectually sharp, deeply traditional.
So when this learned Sagārava hears Dhanañjānī constantly praising the Buddha, he's not impressed.
Not at all. Disdainful, really. He calls the Buddha a shaven-headed ascetic, accuses her of being possessed, defeated even, for following him. It sounds quite pointed.
Ouch. But Dhanañjānī, she stands her ground, right?
She does. She defends the Buddha's virtue, his wisdom, and she challenges Sagārava directly, saying something like, if you actually knew his qualities, you wouldn't talk like that.
Bold move.
And then she goes further. She says, basically, look, when the Buddha comes to Kālāma, why don't you go meet him yourself? An invitation.
Which he accepts.
Apparently so. The text says the Buddha arrives, stays in this mango grove. Dhanañjānī tells Sagārava, he's here. And Sagārava goes. Probably still skeptical, maybe a bit curious.
They exchange polite greetings. Sagārava sits down.
And
then
he gets straight to it. Cuts right to the chase with his core question. He asks the Buddha, essentially, okay, all these ascetics and Brahmins claim they've reached the ultimate goal, complete knowledge, a fulfilled holy life. Where do you stand in all that?
It's a great question, a direct challenge. And the Buddha's response is fascinating. He doesn't just say, I'm the best. He lays out a framework.
Exactly. It's almost analytical. He said, okay, people who make this claim, they tend to fall into three categories. First, those who claim based on hearsay or tradition.
Like the three Veda Brahmins the group Sagārava himself belongs to. Knowledge passed down.
Right, inherited knowledge. The second group, those who claim based purely on faith or maybe reasoning, speculation, inference, strong belief, maybe a good argument, but not direct experience.
And the third category.
That's the key one. Those who claim based on directly comprehending truths they've never heard before, realizing it for themselves.
Personal, undeniable realization. Not tradition, not just belief.
And then the Buddha says, I belong to that third category.
Wow. That's quite a statement. To essentially say, my authority comes from direct personal experience, not just what I've been told or what I believe. That changes the whole game, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It sets the stage for him to explain how he got there. This is where his personal story begins.
So he starts by talking about leaving home, the great renunciation.
Yes. He describes himself as young, full head of dark hair, prime of life. And his parents were weeping, begging him not to go. But he felt this pull, this need to seek what he called the supreme peace.
So he sets off, first stop, a teacher named Kālāma.
Right, a respected teacher at the time. The Buddha goes to him, says he wants to practice the holy life under his guidance.
And he picks it up quickly.
Incredibly quickly. He masters Kālāma's teaching, reaches this very profound meditative state called the dimension of nothingness. It's a state of deep absorption. Very subtle consciousness.
So subtle that the teacher was impressed.
Immensely. Kālāma actually offered him co-leadership of his community. Said, Essentially, you know what I know, let's teach together.
But the Buddha refused. Why?
Here's the critical part. He realized this teaching, this state, did not lead to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, or nibbana.
Nibbana being that ultimate goal, complete liberation.
Exactly. He saw that this state only led to rebirth in the dimension of nothingness. It was high, peaceful, but still within the cycle. So, seeing its limit, he left, still searching.
Okay, so on to the next teacher.
Uddaka Rāmaputta. His father Rama was also a teacher. Again, the Buddha approaches, asks to practice.
And again, masters the teaching.
Just like before, masters it quickly, attains an even more subtle state, the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. It's incredibly refined.
And Uddaka Rāmaputta also offers him leadership.
Yes, full leadership this time. You've reached the pinnacle of my father's teaching. Lead this community.
But the Buddha comes to the same conclusion again.
Precisely the same. He realized that this state also didn't lead to true liberation, to nibbana. It just led to rebirth in that incredibly subtle realm of neither perception nor non-perception. Still not the end of suffering.
So he leaves again.
He does, still seeking.
It's striking, isn't it? He reaches these states that most people would consider, well, the absolute peak. Dimension of nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. Why weren't they enough? What was fundamentally missing?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, these are incredibly advanced states. Deep peace, profound subtlety. But the key insight is, they were still conditioned. They were still states within the cycle of birth and death samsara.
So they were temporary, not permanent freedom.
Exactly. They didn't lead to the complete cessation of suffering, the unbinding, which is what nibbana represents.
Yeah.
They're like very pleasant stops along the way, maybe even golden cages, but still cages. He was looking for the way out altogether.
Not just a better state within the system, but breaking the system itself.
Precisely. And that realization that these highest teachings were still insufficient is what drove him onward.
Okay, so where did he go next? This leads him to Uruvela, right?
Yes, Oruvela Senanigama. He describes finding this spot, saying it was just right. Pleasant grove, clear river, village nearby for alms. He thought, okay, this is a good place for striving, for intense effort.
And here he has these crucial insights. The fire analogy?
That's right. 3 powerful similes came to him, things he said he'd never heard before. Real aha moments.
What were they?
Okay, the first one. Trying to light a fire with wet, sappy wood that's actually in the water.
Impossible.
Totally impossible. He said this is like ascetics who are still attached to sensual pleasures deep down. Even if they're practicing austerities, they can't get the fire of knowledge going.
Makes sense. What's the second?
Second, wet, sappy wood again, but this time it's taken out of the water, placed on dry land. Still wet, though.
Still impossible to light.
Still impossible. This, he said, represents ascetics who are physically separate from sensual pleasures they've withdrawn, but they still have that internal craving, that desire lingering inside. Still no real knowledge possible.
Okay, so physical separation isn't enough if the mind is still craving.
Exactly. Which leads to the third simile, dry wood, like tinder, placed on dry land.
Now that you can light a fire with.
Yes. Fire can be generated. This represents the ascetic, who is not only physically detached, but has also completely let go of the internal craving for sensual pleasures. That's the condition needed for true knowledge to arise.
So the insight is, it's not just about external practices, it's about internal purification, getting rid of the inner wetness of craving.
That's the core of it. A pivotal understanding. External stuff alone won't cut it without cleaning up the internal landscape.
But even with this insight, he didn't immediately find the path, did he? He then went into this period of extreme asceticism.
He did. It's almost like he had to test the absolute limits of self-mortification, perhaps to prove to himself or just explore fully that this wasn't the way either. He really pushed it to the extreme.
How extreme?
Well, he describes, first, mental suppression. Clenching his teeth, pressing his tongue against the roof of his mouth, trying to force his mind into submission. Caused profuse sweating, he says.
Okay. And then?
Breath suppression.
Mm-hmm.
Holding his breath through mouth and nose, said it caused this intense roaring sound in his ears, like a blacksmith's bellows.
Wow.
Then even further, holding breath through mouth, nose, and ears. This led to, like, violent winds piercing his head, agonizing headaches, terrible stomach pains like being stabbed, and intense burning all over his body.
That sounds horrific. And the food?
Extreme deprivation. First, refusing all food. He mentions deities offering him divine food through his pores, but he refused, seeing it as a kind of deception, not real sustenance.
Okay.
Then he started eating minimal amounts, like Tiny handfuls of bean soup, lentil soup, pea soup, barely anything.
And the physical effects must have been devastating.
Oh, the description is graphic. His limbs became like withered twigs, his backside like a camel's hoof. You could see his spine like a string of beads, ribs sticking out like rafters on a ruined shed.
Goodness.
His eyes sunk deep into their sockets like water at the bottom of a deep well. His scalp shriveled up. His skin literally clung to his backbone. He says he'd fall down just trying to relieve himself. His hair fell out. His skin lost its color.
It's hard to even picture that level of emaciation, just complete physical breakdown.
Thoroughly broken down. And here's the crucial point he makes after describing all this horror.
What's that?
He concludes that no ascetic, ever past, present, or future, could possibly experience more suffering through self-mortification than he had. He'd gone to the absolute limit.
And yet
he realized all this terrible suffering had not led him to what he was seeking. Not to superior human states, not to that full, noble knowledge and vision, not to enlightenment.
So after all that, the most extreme effort imaginable, he had to admit, this isn't it.
Exactly. It forced him to ask that fundamental question. Might there be another path to enlightenment?
And this questioning, this rejection of extreme asceticism leads him back to something else.
It does. It opens the door to rediscovering what we now call the middle path. He remembers something from his childhood.
What was that?
Sitting under a rose apple tree in the cool shade. And quite naturally, spontaneously, he entered the first jhana.
Jhana being one of those deep meditative states.
Yes, but this one is characterized by joy and pleasure born of detachment, along with thinking and examining. It wasn't forced, it wasn't painful. It arose naturally from being peaceful and secluded.
So he wonders, maybe that's the path. Not extreme suffering, but this state of focused, calm pleasure.
Right. Could this be the way? But he also realized something else.
What?
He realized it's pretty hard to achieve that kind of pleasant, focused state when your body's completely wrecked. You need some basic strength.
Makes sense. You can't concentrate well if you're starving and collapsing.
So he made a decision, a pretty controversial one at the time, apparently. He decided to take grosser food again, rice and gruel, to build back his physical strength.
And this didn't go over well with everyone.
Not with the 5 ascetics who had been attending him. They'd been sticking around, probably thinking, okay, he's pushing the limits, maybe he'll break through with more suffering. When they saw him eating normally again, they thought he'd given up.
They thought he'd reverted to indulgence.
Exactly, so they left him. He was completely alone now.
But this decision to nourish his body was actually key.
Absolutely key, because with renewed strength, and now in solitude, he could practice effectively. He systematically entered and settled into the 4 jhanas.
Can you walk us through those briefly?
Sure. The first jhana, as we said, detachment from unwholesome states, resulting in rapture and pleasure, but still with thinking. Then the second jhana, thinking fades away, still rapture and pleasure, but now born of concentration, deep inner calm. Third jhana, the intense rapture fades, replaced by a more equanimous pleasure. You're mindful, clearly aware, feeling pleasure with the body, but very balanced. And finally, the fourth jhana. Even that bodily pleasure and all pain is abandoned. It's a state of pure equanimity and mindfulness beyond joy and sorrow. Ultra clear, ultra still.
So he attained these stable, concentrated states of mind. And from there,
from that state of deep concentration, purity, and stillness achieved in the 4th jhana, his mind was ready. He directed it towards true knowledge. And over the course of one night, he attained the 3 knowledges, the tavijja.
The breakthroughs that constitute enlightenment, what were they?
First watch of the night, knowledge of the recollection of past lives. He directly saw and recalled countless previous existences where he'd been, what he'd done in vivid detail. A direct perception of rebirth.
Okay, then the middle watch.
Knowledge of the passing away and rebirth of beings, often called the divine eye. He saw how beings die and are reborn according to their karma, their actions. He saw the whole mechanism playing out directly.
Understanding the law of cause and effect across lifetimes.
Precisely. And then the final crucial one. In the last watch of the night, before dawn.
The ultimate realization.
Knowledge of the destruction of the taints, or asavakayanya. The taints, the asavas, are these deep-seated defilements. Sensual desire, the craving for existence itself, and fundamental ignorance. He understood them completely.
Understood what about them?
He understood suffering what it is, its origin, craving, and ignorance, its cessation that it can end, and the path leading to its cessation, the path he had just found. He saw the taints, their origin, how they cease, and the path to their cessation.
And with that understanding.
His mind was liberated, completely freed, and the knowledge arose in him. Birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being. Full enlightenment.
Wow. Hearing it laid out like that, the whole journey, from the early teachers through the extreme asceticism to rediscovering the jhanas and then these final knowledges, it's an incredible arc.
It really is. A testament to perseverance, but also to learning from what doesn't work.
So back to Sagārava, the skeptic who came to question him. How did he react to hearing this whole detailed account?
He was profoundly affected. The text says he praised the Buddha, really admired the noble effort and the journey described. Clearly, the detailed personal account resonated deeply.
But he still had one more question, right? A very direct one.
Yes. After all that, he asks point blank, is there a God?
Such a fundamental human question. What was the Buddha's response?
His first reply is recorded as, it is directly known that there is a God.
Okay. Which prompts Sagārava to ask, essentially, isn't that just an empty claim? False.
Right. And the Buddha clarifies he doesn't really engage in a theological debate. He says that a discerning person would accept this as directly known, and adds that it's also a widely accepted notion in the world.
That's interesting. It's not a simple yes or no, is it? How should we read that, especially after he emphasized direct knowledge as the highest authority?
It seems consistent with his framework. He's pointing back to that third category, things directly known or experienced. He isn't necessarily making a dogmatic statement about a god or gods in the way Sagārava might expect from his tradition.
So it's more like acknowledging that such realities might be within the scope of direct knowing for those who develop the capacity, and perhaps also acknowledging the common belief without necessarily building a whole system around it.
That seems to be the most reasonable interpretation in context. He's grounding it in the potential for direct experience, which was the core of his own path, rather than getting drawn into abstract belief or theological argument. It's a subtle but important distinction.
So it's not about accepting dogma, but about what can potentially be realized.
Exactly. It keeps the focus on the path of practice and direct insight.
And how did Sagārava take all this? The whole story, the final exchange.
He was completely won over. He uses these beautiful metaphors, saying the Buddha has set upright what was overturned, revealed what was hidden, shown the way to the lost, held up a lamp in the darkness. Classic expressions of gaining clarity.
A total turnaround from the initial skepticism.
Complete turnaround. He then declares he takes refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the community. He becomes a lay follower for life.
What an incredible deep dive that was. The Sagāravasuttaṃ really gives you this raw, personal account of transformation.
It really does. And it hammers home the power of direct experience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Over just believing something or even over pushing yourself through extreme practices without the right understanding.
Yeah, the lessons feel so relevant. Perseverance, definitely, but also critical thinking, questioning teachers, questioning practices, even questioning your own insights until you reach something truly unshakable.
And it highlights that true insight often comes from that internal work, that purification, dealing with the wet wood of craving inside, not just changing external circumstances.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What dry wood, what potential for clear seeing might you be overlooking in your own search for understanding? And what unheard truths could emerge if you relied more on your own direct exploration rather than just tradition or what seems logical on the surface?
That's the perfect question to leave folks with. What happens when you truly investigate for yourself?